Name's Dr. Luke Robinson. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Occupational Therapy at Monash University, and I'm really excited to be able to share with you some information about my amazing profession, occupational therapy, as well as some insights about our occupational therapy program and curriculum at Monash University. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm on today, the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be joining us. I've grown up on this land, I work on this land, and I continue to live on this land. And I'm deeply grateful for the care, knowledge, and connection that First Nation peoples have maintained here for countless generations. I acknowledge the sovereignty was never ceded. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. As someone still learning, I'm committed to listening deeply, walking with respect, and honouring the ongoing strength and wisdom of the First Nation communities. Before we get to some information about our occupational therapy courses at Monash, let's just have a bit of an exploration about what occupational therapy is and what occupational therapists do. So occupational therapists enable people to participate in the activities of everyday life they want to and need to do by modifying the occupation and environments. So when we're thinking around the word occupation, we're talking to all of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, that make us uniquely ourselves. So when explaining occupational therapy, one of the easiest ways to think about it is thinking back to a time that you may have been unwell with a virus that's wiped you out, you're stuck at home and you can't do those things that you normally do, whether that be going out and socializing with your friends or going to work, whether that be as much as being able to get off the couch to go and prepare yourself a meal to eat for that particular day. So as occupational therapists, what we really focus on is those meaningful activities that are really important to us and making sure that whatever is going on in life, whether that be disease or injury or illness or other conditions, that we're able to allow that person or enable that person to do those things that are meaningful to them. Big life question is, why choose occupational therapy? So occupational therapy is a career for life. What's really good about occupational therapy is that our scope of practice is really large, and it means that you can change career paths rather easily and work in a range of different settings. So we've had some of our ex-graduates who finished quite a few years ago now who started practicing in a physical health environment, so focusing more on rehabilitation, then moving to mental health services provision, back to physical health, and now are a manager in a mental health service. So there is that ability to build your professional profile or your career trajectory depending on your interests, and you can easily move around and upskill in different areas. When thinking about where we work, we are a profession that works across the lifespan. So there are occupational therapists who work with newborns and also alongside their mothers for various reasons coming into this world where they need that early intervention, all the way up to the other end of the spectrum where we are supporting people going through their final days on Earth and making sure that their wishes for how they wish to go through life are honoured, and making sure that they're able to pass away in, say, the comfort of their home by providing services and also equipment to allow them to do so. We work with children, adults, and also elder adults in a range of different settings, which I'll talk about shortly. What's really good about our profession too is that it isn't just always delivering service one-on-one, but we do work with different service delivery models. So particularly thinking around working with children, we're not just working with the child, but also working alongside the family and even their school teachers at times to make sure that we are providing the services that are the best fit for that particular client or consumer. We also work in groups, so providing, say, a rehabilitation group, but also at a community or organizational level as well, with occupational therapists working in agencies such as Beyond Blue and these sort of larger scale organizations where there's scope to think about how people are doing the things that they need to do out in their communities. Beyond just service provision, so providing a service to an individual client, we also work in different spaces where we're designing services. So being in embedded in, say, building projects and shopping centres and thinking around accessibility and how we are ensuring that members of our community are able to partake in going to the shops and being able to access certain facilities. But also a large area in which we play is thinking around advocacy and policy development. And then also in the education and research space as well. So very broad scope of practice in which we can work. And taking those skills, there are all these different areas in which we can work. Generally, the ones that most people know about with occupational therapy tend to be more the hospital or the rehabilitation settings. But as you can see on this slide here, there are so many different areas of practice that we are working in, with new practice areas continuing to emerge very, very rapidly at this particular point in time. One of the reasons why we have kind of exploded in new practice areas in more recent times is the onset of the National Disability Insurance Scheme, or the NDIS, with the main growth areas that we're seeing in those emerging practice areas being in community practice. So therapists going out into people's homes and working alongside them to build capacity and to be able to access community or the things that they would like to do. Working in people's homes. So there has been a large shift for rehabilitation to occur in the home, away from a hospital setting, which has a lot of different health and well-being benefits, and also a lot of work with working with children and families, and early intervention in the school settings. So some of the areas you may not be more familiar with in terms of where occupational therapists work is in mental health. So whether that be all the way at the start of the presentation in coming to emergency department, or working out in the community and helping support people to build their capacity to be able to do the things that they need to do. So very large practice areas that we can work in, and I could talk for an hour about all those different things, but definitely just take note that there are a lot of different practice areas in which you can work as an occupational therapist. So what do you need to know about our course at Monash University? So in terms of the course duration, it is a 4-year full-time bachelor's degree. It is an honours degree where everyone who does the course achieves an honours degree because of the embedded nature of some some practice education experiences in the 3rd and 4th years of the program. There are 2 different streams of that, and I'll talk to that in a second. The course location, all our classes are completed at the Peninsula campus down in Frankston. If you haven't had the pleasure of joining us down at the Peninsula campus, I highly recommend you come for a tour. It is absolutely beautiful campus with lots of native animals. I was greeted yesterday at my office door by a kookaburra on a tree. It's just a lovely campus that has a real community vibe about it. In terms of workload for our course, you're looking at around 18 to 20 contact hours per week, in addition to your extra learning and also your assessment tasks. Our course runs at a intake at a semester 1 level, so there's no mid-year intake for our undergraduate program. How do we teach our students? So we have a range of different teaching mediums that we use across our course. Some of them will vary from year level to year level, or even semester to semester, depending on the curriculum that we're trying to teach. We try and have a hands-on approach as much as possible. So when you are coming to the university for your learning, you've come prepared with your self-directed learning. And then on campus, you are putting that learning into practice. So that could look like a workshop where you're coming along and, like the images showing here, thinking about how you'd prescribe equipment to consumers to be able to complete safe bathing in this particular example. Or it could be coming to the class and practicing your interview skills in the 3rd week of your studies in one of my units. So we try and make sure that all the learning that is done more in that self-directed learning space is reinforced and applied in those practical type classes. There is some opportunity for some online real-time classes. So that's where you'd attend on Zoom or other video conferencing software. But this is mostly done when students are on their practice education placements out in the field, so that they're engaging with each other and also educators while they're doing those placements. A lot of our program's backbone is on case studies. So the one of the large assets of our course is the notion of scenario-based learning, where at the beginning of the week, you will be given a case. that case simulates professional practice. So the sorts of clients or consumers that you would see in practice, and all your learning for that particular week is focused on that case. So if, for example, the case was centered around an individual who'd had a stroke, all of your knowledge for that particular week would be focusing on what type of assessments would you consider for that particular client in the second year, first semester of the course. And all of your anatomy knowledge would be focused on the anatomy of stroke and looking at the central nervous system and the brain. And then you may look at the types of things or interventions that you do with that client as well. So what we try and do is have a narrative throughout the learning that you're almost simulating what you'd expect to see out in practice. One of the unique things that we have as well is the human library. And that's where we have people coming in from the community to share their stories with our students around their life experiences. So getting the opportunity to get an insight into their lived experience about what they have faced during their lives and get a sense of what maybe disability, injury, or illness and the impact that that has had on their ability to do the things that they want to do. And like all the courses that you'll hear from this evening, we do have interprofessional learning opportunities where we do classes with other disciplines and other courses at the campus. So I did mention before that there is some learning that is done whilst you're on practice education placements. So this talks to fieldwork. So this is where you are out in the field, putting your skills that you've learned at university into practice. As part of the occupational therapy program, and this speaks to occupational therapy programs nationwide, to be able to pass the degree, you'll need to demonstrate 1,000 hours of practice education placement completion by the end of the course and being ready to enter into practice. In our course, that starts in the first year, and those 1,000 hours are accumulated across those 4 years. There's a range of different practice education placements. So some will be community-based, some will be simulation in a teaching hospital environment where the clients are played by actors in a more controlled environment, and some will be in industries such as hospitals as well. So a range of different practice areas you will be exposed to. As I said before, all students come out at the end of the course with an honours degree. There are 2 streams. One is the participatory community project stream. And in that stream, you are working in pairs or groups of 3 with an agency who has come up with an identified need. So some examples in the past include Gymnastics Victoria came to us and said, we're looking at increasing our visibility for members in the community living with a disability, and we want them to be more involved in our organisation. So our students met with the agencies and met with the people who are responsible for marketing, and then actually did workshops with consumers about how we can bridge the gap and get people to be more involved in those organisations. And that's what they delivered as part of their project. The other stream is an honours research stream. So this is an individual honours project where you work with an academic supervisor on a research project with the aim to write a manuscript and submit it for publication. And both of those have 2 days a week of embedded practice education placement, and that's completed in the 3rd and 4th years of the course. A few important things to note around the way our practice educations work within the Department of Occupational Therapy at Monash University. Typically, and I say typically, it's expected that you complete one of your placements in a rural location, which is defined as outside of metropolitan Melbourne. Obviously, we take into consideration a whole bunch of factors when allocating placements, but one of the things to be prepared for is one of those rural placements. There are quite a few compliance requirements that you'll need to make sure that you're able to do, and that includes immunizations, police checks and various other checks, which are self-funded, and also placement related expenses as well, such as accommodation, travel, food, and your uniform as well. It's also advantageous to have a car to be able to get to those placements, but arrangements can be made if that is not possible. Thinking towards the pathways into the course. So if you're looking at being a high school leaver and coming from high school or after a gap year into the program, this is what you'd need to be able to aim for. So the requirements are a minimum of 30 in English in the EAL or 25 in other English. We have a few recommendations, so we don't have prerequisites, but the recommendations you can see there listed on the slide will lead to an aggregate point of 2 points higher. So that doesn't speak to an ATAR point, but talks to the ranking score as well. Last year, coming into the course, so our first year students who started in March this year, the lowest selection rank of an offer was an ATAR of 90.7. In terms of the other pathways, there's always pathways to get in. If you've done a year of full-time study, you would need to have a minimum of a 70% grade so that you are competitive to be able to do a course transfer. We don't consider the courses that have been studied, but only the results. So it doesn't matter if you've done a first year of an arts degree, for example, as long as you are meeting that 70% minimum, it makes you competitive to be transferred into the course. Diplomas will be considered, but there is also you needing to have some academic merit with a minimum of a 70% average. But once again, admission is competitive. Unfortunately, TAFE qualifications are not accepted, and non-Monash students need to apply through the VTAC process, whereas if it's an internal transfer, it's a slightly different process where we will review grades, and once again, looking at a 70% average of grade to be competitive for that particular pathway. In addition to our undergraduate course, we do have a Master's of Occupational Therapy Practice. This is a postgrad, so this is after you have completed an undergraduate degree. It is a 2-year accelerated program, which is also completed at the Peninsula campus. It's a mid-year intake in July, and it is a full fee-paying course. Within that course, you will also need to achieve the 1,000 hours of practice education as well. The pathway in is looking at an average of a score of 65% in a bachelor's degree. It doesn't guarantee, but it makes you more competitive. But that kind of minimum is 65%, and a few prerequisites around anatomy as well. So a few things to consider there if that is a pathway, and that QR code down the bottom will send you for some more information. All of our courses are accredited by the bodies that are required to be able to produce graduates that allow you to apply for registration once you have completed your studies within the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency. And you can go off and work overseas as long as you meet country requirements for that. One of the most important things to consider when you're thinking around what to study, and this is a common question that we do get asked, is what are the job prospects? So as you can see here, the Australian government has forecast an approximately 7.1% increase in demand for OTs across Australia from 2021 to 2026. And just before I jumped on this evening for the webinar, I did a quick search on Seek just for occupational therapists in Victoria, and over 1,200 jobs were advertised there. And this excludes other roles that occupational therapists can work in, but not necessarily advertised as occupational therapists, such as case managers and a few other different roles that OTs can work in as well. Thank you very much for listening about my absolutely amazing profession that I could talk about for hours and hours, how amazing it is. But what I'm going to do now is pass over to one of our third-year students, Samantha, who's going to share her experiences with the program.
Sorry. So hello everyone, my name is Samantha and I'm currently a third year occupational therapy student at Monash Peninsula campus. I originally actually came from Queensland to study in Melbourne at Monash, and today I will be explaining my classroom experiences and placement experiences within this course. So just some classroom experiences to start off with. Within first year, I was at university roughly 3 days a week, and they weren't full days at the campus. Within second year, I was at university 4 days a week with 1 full day and 2 half a days. And then within third year, I am at the campus 4 days a week with 2 full days and 1 half a day. How university classes ran for me is every week I would have to complete pre-work before coming to that tutorial class. And then that class would be specifically on like one specific area of that they touched in of the pre-work. In terms of staff, the lecturers are really accommodating and understanding of the content and workload. It starts off pretty easy and then it slowly gets harder and harder as your knowledge grows within the topic. The staff are really responsive to feedback. An example is last year we had a little issue with the rubric. It was changed within 24 hours and they actually gave us extra time to complete the assignment due to that. In terms of placement experiences, they do differ per year. But some examples for me was within first year, I completed 45 hours of community fieldwork volunteering. So this is where I had to go off and find my own place to volunteer at. And I volunteered at Racing Hearts, which is equine therapy. And this really taught me basically how to be professional and work within a professional environment. In terms of second year, there was 2 placements I completed. The first placement was 52 hours of simulation placement within semester 1. So this is where they had someone come in and they were an actor and they acted as a client. They're very real. And I basically administered an occupational therapy assessment and got to know how to document and complete professional documentation. Then within semester 2, I completed aged care placement. So this is where I was paired up with a fellow OT student and we learnt to administer assessments and work with an elderly client. And also we got to administer a basic intervention. An example is that I basically provided education to my client. In terms of third year, this is 6 weeks worth of placement. So this is where you can be sent anywhere. So some examples Luke did go through, but like hospitals, school, community rehabilitation centres and more. The placement team do try to place you in an area that you're interested in specialising in. So for example, I'm interested in peds and this year I will be completing this placement at a school. And then in terms of fourth year, this is a 10-week placement at the end of the year. So it's one of the last things that we complete before we graduate. Some things, tips and advice I would say for all students is starting work and assessments as early as possible. Sometimes, especially when you get to the end and in the middle of the semester, the workload definitely builds up. I would ask for help as soon as you need it to try and facilitate starting work and having assessments done early, and complete the pre-works before class, because if you don't, sometimes you get very confused in class. So definitely complete them before class. So I will now hand over to Mick to talk about physiotherapy. Thank you.